In this lesson, we will be going over ungating for main categories. Now, what ungating for main categories is simply the approval process for getting ungated in main categories. Okay, so it's not getting ungated for brands or subcategories. Now, you may be a little confused on the difference between a subcategory and a main category, okay? Now, it's just simply how Amazon basically lists their products, and that's really the difference. But what we're going to go over right now is the approval process for getting ungated in main categories. Now, what it does, it simply allows you to sell products in that main category. Now, if you are still restricted in a brand, so say for example, if you're restricted in the beauty category and it's a Disney brand, you're still not going to be able to go sell that product because you're going to be restricted in that Disney brand. However, if you come across a product where you are not restricted in that certain brand, but it's in beauty, and if you get ungated in beauty, then you can sell that product, and you can sell all types of those products. Okay, so once you are ungated once, you don't have to get ungated for another product in that category. So if you get ungated for beauty once, you can sell all beauty products, as long as it doesn't have any other restrictions. Now, why you need it is because for getting ungated in main categories, if you don't get ungated in main categories, then you're not going to have any luck selling a lot of the products that are in other subcategories, because usually when a product is in a subcategory, it tends to have a also restricted main category. Now, for main categories, what I'm going to be talking about is something called being auto-approve and the requirements for main categories. Now, what auto-approve or auto-approval or getting auto-approved is when you go hit request approval and you get automatically approved. Okay, usually what Amazon does is they have you fill out some questions, they have you fill out a survey, you have to apply some invoices or apply some documents. However, there's a lot of categories where you can actually get automatically approved. Or some of them's not necessarily getting automatically approved, but sometimes it's very simple that you literally just have to fill out a couple of questions and you're good. For example, and take in mind that Amazon always changes, okay? So the approval process is always different for each category. That's why I'm not going to go too in depth of the actual requirements for every single category. However, for example, there was a time where clothing, all you had to do is watch a 15-minute video that Amazon presented and they would approve you, okay? For watches, you just have to fill out some information, and this could be totally different now. However, you can just fill out some information, answer some questions in the approval process, and you get ungated, okay? However, with beauty and grocery, those tends to be harder categories that are more restricted, and it's harder for people to actually get ungated, and usually the automatic approval process doesn't really work. However, keep this in mind, is that if you have a healthy account and if you have a consistent amount of sales and a good sales history, you can pretty much get ungated in anything. And now there's no set number that Amazon shows you that you need to have to automatically get approved for everything, but it's usually around, if you consistently get $50,000 in sales per month, you can basically get approved in anything. So if that is you, which for most people it's usually not, you can basically get approved in everything. However, by you having zero sales does not mean you can't get approved. I actually have ungating services. I actually have partnered with ungating services, and I've been able to get people ungated in beauty and topicals before their account was verified. Now, if you've ever tried to get ungated, you might know those are probably the hardest categories to get and subcategories to get ungated in. But what I'm trying to tell you and get to the point here is that even if you've never sold a product on Amazon, you can get approved in these categories, okay? Now, for the requirements, it's different for every single category. So what I'm going to do is show you a page where I'll actually have a link down below in this video that you can go and see the requirements for every single category. Okay, so how I got to this page here is I simply search restricted categories in Amazon, but I will have a link below in this video. Now, with this, you can go click on any single one of these categories, and these are all the main categories, okay? Now, with this, if you go click on view requirements, say for example, we want to go view requirements for grocery and gourmet foods, you hit view requirements, and you can go read through all of this, okay? Now, I'm not going to go through all this with you, but for example, there's seller requirements and there's product requirements, and then requirements for refrigerated food and variations. There's a lot of things to read through, okay? And some of you may not need to know. However, let's just go read a few of the requirements right here, where it says you must be a seller on the professional selling plan. So if you're on the individual selling plan, then sometimes Amazon doesn't allow you to really get ungated for many categories. And you also need to have a healthy account. So your order defect rate has to be less than 1%. Your pre-fulfillment cancel rate has to be less than 2.5%. And late shipment rate is less than 4%. Now, if you're doing FBA, don't worry about any of this, okay? And it looks like you need to provide invoices, and you are not required to have your own company website, but if you have one, it will be helpful for us to review the process. So you don't need your own website, okay? But for any category you're wanting to get ungated in, simply just go look at the requirements and see if you fit those, okay? Now, I will be talking later in other modules about using ungating services, which can usually be a help, because what happens with most people is they can't get this stuff, which isn't a problem, okay? But if you have all this and you don't want to use an ungating service, which you will understand what ungating service is later, you can read through this and see if you have them, okay? However, keep in mind, some categories are harder than others and some are a lot easier. What I recommend is simply to go through all the requirements and try to get ungated in basically all the categories, okay? Because I know clothing and luggage and travel are literally, you just have to fill out a few information. Sometimes it's just watch a video and you get ungated. Now, things with grocery, you saw there, it has a little more restrictions, okay? Now, to recap what you learned what a main category is. You also learned how to get auto-approved for some categories. So you learned that it's either sometimes categories are just very easy to get ungated in, or it's because you've had good sales history, okay? However, but you also learned that just because you've never sold any products on Amazon doesn't mean you can't get ungated, okay? And then you also learned the requirements for main categories, and you really learned where to go find those requirements.